It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
You know, many times I've said to myself, when I grow up, I want to be just like John Combest. I want to know the scoop, what's going on, and I want to have sources, okay? I have a source that shall remain nameless that texted me this last night. Now, I'm going to read this. This is not necessarily grammatically correct, but I will read you what was texted me last night, okay?
I'm ready.
So the Vernon County Central Committee chair that is behind all of the lawsuits, who lost with 12 other of her crazy cohorts, decides to usurp the committee and holds her own restructuring committee with the old members and re-election herself chair, even though she lost 74 to 26 or so. She calls a meeting at her house at 12:01 a.m. and sends a letter to the state GOP declaring herself chair because none of the people who were elected by the voters were qualified to serve because they were not vetted by her committee. Okay, so did you know this crazy story?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so
hold on, let me interrupt. Is there excuse me, a news article to go along with this, or is this kind of hearsay and Facebook posts?
Okay, hold on a minute. Let me see. I will find this. Okay, this is on, and here's my source on this. This is from this is on Facebook, okay? And it's titled, and it's from a lady by the name of Shelley Baldwin. And it says, letter from Missouri Republican Central Committee, Cyndia, is that her name? Cyndia, C-Y-N-D-I-A? Cyndia Haggard. Cyndia Haggard, let this email serve as an official notification that your submission will not be accepted by the Missouri Republican Party. A few of the reasons why your submission has been denied are mentioned below, but it is not an exhaustive list. A, reorganization occurred outside of the statutory window provided by the RSMO 115.621, Section 2. The meeting in question occurred at a private residence on the evening of Monday, August 19, 2024. B, the county chair and vice chair must be members of the committee pursuant to RSMO 115.621, paragraph 2. Cyndia Haggard was a candidate for Ward 7 committee woman, but was not elected. See here, Dennis Turner was a candidate for Ward 9 committee, was not elected. See here. Sincerely, Miles Ross, Executive Director, Missouri Republican Party.
Miles is great. Okay.
Okay, now, you know who I'm going to call, John?
Oh, yeah, go ahead and call him.
Okay, let's see if you're answering the phone. Let me see. MCC, found his name. Where is he? Here he is right now. Okay, here we go. We'll see what happens. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
We're calling.
Hello?
Is Mark there?
Yeah, who's calling, please?
It's Brad Hildebrand, his favorite radio guy.
Okay, hold on just a minute.
Okay. That was his wife, I think, answered the phone. Either that or his girlfriend or something like that, right? Well, hopefully.
Mark. Our house is big, so it takes a while to get places.
Okay, well, you know, I know the feeling. I'm on the third floor of my castle right now.
Okay, hold on. Brad Hildebrand.
Oh, hi, Brad.
Mark,
Hey, how you doing? I was feeling lonely. You hadn't called for a while.
Well, Mark, I got to ask you, I've gotten some inside sources on some crazy activity down in Vernon County. Are you familiar with what's been going on this week down in Vernon County?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, explain to me what's happening down there. Okay, can you explain it?
Well, in simple terms, there are two different Republican slates that got elected. The folks that are the old chairperson, Cyndia Haggard, has instituted mandatory vetting in Vernon County, meaning that if you wanted to run as a Republican for any office in Vernon County, you had to go through the vetting process to demonstrate your Republican bona fides. There is a contrary slate of Republican candidates who refuse to be vetted, saying, how dare you require me to be a Republican in order to run as a Republican. That slate got elected, but the position of the old county committee is that if you haven't been vetted, you don't, quote, qualify, unquote. And in order to be an elected official, you have to file a declaration of candidacy saying that you are qualified, eligible and qualified for that position. And so now the new slate says they got the majority of the votes. The old slate says that we got the majority of the votes for qualified candidates, which is what the statute requires. And so now they're competing Republican committees in Vernon County.
Well, I have in front of me, this has been sent to me by a couple people. I have in front of me a letter to Cynthia Haggart from Miles Ross, who is he's the executive director of the Missouri Republican Party. Are you familiar with Miles?
I sure am.
Okay, so are you on his side or against him? I guess that's the question to ask you.
Well, no, I represented the old committee as an attorney, so and I've taken the issue of whether or not the Republicans can require you to be a Republican before you run as a Republican. We won that in the state and the trial court level. We're in the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals ruled that the 8 weeks before the before the election had run, so the ballot couldn't be altered, and so the case was moot. And so that's kind of where we got stuck in the last election cycle. But yeah, I'm firmly behind the concept that if you're going to be a Republican, if you're going to run as a Republican, you ought to be a Republican. And I know that Miles and Nick Myers, who's the chairman of the state party, are both opposed to that concept. In fact, Nick Myers, as the chairman of the Republican Party for the state of Missouri, refused to even acknowledge that people who wish to run as Republicans ought to adhere to the Republican platform, if you could believe that.
Well, Mark, I'm going to ask you a question, and don't be mad at me when I ask you this question, but
I'd never be mad at you.
I've looked at this from afar. We've talked on the air about this. This has actually turned into an interesting statewide situation because there's implications all over. As a matter of fact, even in the St. Louis County area, or Franklin County area, you live out there in Franklin County. This is going on right now in Franklin County with the vetting, correct?
Yeah, Franklin County is a mandatory vetting county.
Okay. I look at this and I say, these people are wackadoodles. Convince me they're not, okay?
Sure, I can convince you in 2 sentences. How come we've got supermajorities? Republicans have supermajorities in both houses in Missouri and a Republican governor, but we can't get any Republican agendas passed? And the answer is because the majority of those people who run as Republicans are really Democrats that just realize that in Missouri today, you cannot get elected with a D behind your name. So the only way to make sure that the people that actually run with an R behind their name actually adhere to Republican values is to require them to go through the vetting process. Was that 2 sentences or 3?
So, long story made short, you're still very much in the camp that there should be a purity test for Republicans, correct?
Not a purity test, it's the policy and procedures test. If you don't adhere to the basic principles of small government, personal freedom, independence, and all the things that the Republican Party is supposed to stand for, then you shouldn't run as a Republican. There's other parties you can run for. You can be a Libertarian, you can be a Democrat, you can be what you want to be. But if you're going to run as a Republican, you should adhere to basic Republican principles.
So, can I ask you one other weird question?
There's no weird questions, just weird people asking them.
How do you feel about RFK?
Well, there's an interesting thing. I tell you, once again, he's a quandary because he's a very, very bright guy. He's remarkably intelligent. He has just encyclopedic knowledge of foreign affairs and international intrigue going back 60 years. He's a year older than me and, quite frankly, in better shape. So he's got a lot of good things going for him. But on the other hand, he's a dyed-in-the-wool, old-style super liberal. And but being an old-style super liberal makes him a right-wing extremist in this Democrat Party.
Well, the reason I bring that up because you know the story about he's going to be making big news today in Arizona. You know about that then, right?
Yeah, and I got some inside scoop 2 days ago that it's probably going to happen. So I'm kind of ahead of the curve on that one.
Well, Mark, you know what? I appreciate your candor in this. I mean, you know, the interesting thing about it is I've had people say to me, you just call that guy and he answers the phone? I go, yes, unless, and you know the drill. A couple times we've called and you haven't answered the phone, and why? You were on another radio station, right? So
that's it.
We respect that. Mark, and by the way, was that your wife that answered the phone?
That was, so when I'm not available, she always is, and vice versa.
Well, tell her I said hi. She probably doesn't remember me, but we met her, this probably been, 4 years ago out at the Family Arena with that big confab that was going on out there. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah. We were driving out to Washington the other day from the wine country, and I was going to pose and have a picture taken in front of your crap antenna, but I didn't get around to doing it.
John, Mark, you know what? What's interesting is there's major changes at Crapville. Major changes in Crapville. So go by and take a look again. We're putting them some new stuff in there. How about that?
All right. I'll do it.
Okay, Mark, thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
John, what do you think about that?
So many gems. By the way, Brad, there's no weird questions, only weird people asking them.
He's good, isn't he?
He was a quote machine today, Brad. He was a quote machine today.
You know what? Love him or hate him. I know he's one of those guys. There's no in between. You either look at him and you go like, I can't believe him and his wife did that terrible thing, or the other side of the equation is, hats off to Mark McCloskey for defending his property. You know what I mean? There's nobody.
Absolutely.
There's nobody in the middle. And if you don't know what we're talking about, that's Mark McCloskey and his wife, who were the ones that when all the what were they protesting? Was that the?
It was just Black Lives Matter. It was during it was after St. George Floyd's the fentanyl enthusiast St. George Floyd's death.
It was either that or was it the Stokely thing? Was it the Stokely trial?
Oh, yeah. You know what? You got a good point. I think it was 2020, though. I think it was 2020. I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, the story is he has a very nice mansion down in the Central West End in a gated community, and a group of protesters who were going to the mayor's house. And the bizarre part of it is I don't think she even lived there anymore. I think that was part of the story. She lived somewhere else. So they broke into his gated community, and en masse, is that the way you said it? En masse?
Yeah, that's good enough. Yeah.
En masse, they walked across his property, and him and his wife, he got his black rifle, his AR-15, and she got some goofy little 380, pocket pistol or something like that. And they were aiming it at the protesters, essentially saying, get off our property. And they got arrested, and Kim Gardner took them to trial, and they got convicted, and then they got pardoned by Parson. Didn't he pardon them in the whole bit?
He did, yeah.
I mean, it's just, and what's interesting is how this whole crazy thing started when I was doing the show with Shelley on the BS show. One morning, we're talking about him, and I was on his webpage. At the time he was running, I think he was running for U.S. Senate, wasn't that? He was running the Republican ticket for U.S. Senate. He was running against Eric Schmidt, okay? And on his website, there was a phone number. And I said, live on the air, I said, Shelley, let's call this number and see who answers. So we call the phone, and it's him. It's his cell phone number. Now, John, you know the story. I have, right away, in my book, he got 100 points right away because nowadays, how many websites have I gone to where you go to the contact page and all there is a stupid contact form, okay?
I know.
And on our web pages, I have my cell phone number. The number that is on our web page is 314-280-8880. If you call that line right now, it'll ring right here in the studio. If you text me, the text will come right over my phone. I'm to the point where, why would I make it tough for people to want to do business with me, okay? Here's my phone number, okay? So we called him on the air, and since you and I have done the show, what is this, like the fourth or fifth time we've called him? Something like that?
Yeah, I think so. It's been several.
And what's interesting is he's always got interesting stuff. I mean, like you said it, all the quotes. What was your favorite thing he said when he was insulting me?
Well, my favorite quote came from Patty because she was quoting your high school girlfriend. But the best quote from Mark was, there are no weird questions, only weird people asking them. He also taught us, Brad, I didn't know this, that the correct pronunciation is bona fides. I always thought it was I always said bona fides. Well, like they're going to brush up on their bona fides.
I think he's using the true Latin pronunciation, right? Isn't that what it is?
That would be it. Now, Patty had the best quote, which is she said, Brad, what your high school girlfriend said to you. When your high school girlfriend said, and I wrote it down because it's so good, my space is big, so it takes a while to get places. Now, Brad, you heard that when we're driving north on Newhall's Ferry, but we don't need to get into that. But yeah, so Patty had the best quote. It's always good when you live in a mansion, Brad, to remind people that you live in a mansion. Yes. Like you definitely want to flex. And by the way, I liked how you pointed out, hey, everybody's heard the RFK stuff. And you said, and then Mark needed to point out, Well, I got some inside information, some people close to it. So see, that's the great thing about having a friend as important as you do. Mark McCloskey is so important that he hears this stuff before everybody else, Brad.
Well, see, once again, on the pecking order of media, like if you start at the top, like with, the people in town, like with Mark Cox and with Mark Reardon and things like that. Okay, if they're at the top, I'm somewhere near number 365. I'm way down at the bottom
And
of the list.
I have quit. You'll notice in the last few weeks, I quit trying to fix that in you, Brad. When you insult listeners and you insult the work that we do here, I stop correcting it because Brad's going to be Brad.
Well,
but your point is you're a lowly person and you're a low-level person and people shouldn't respect you enough to take your call is what you're saying.
Well, but John, hold on a minute. Okay, hold on a minute. Let's say you're at home eating at night and you're home having dinner with your kids, okay? And you're sitting around the kitchen table and you see a phone call come up and it's a reporter for the Post-Dispatch. You go, I'll call her later. But if you looked out at your phone and it says White House, POTUS, and you go, no, hold on a minute now. Who could this be?
Don't take it. We've been through this before. I mean, I'm not going to answer a phone call, period. People have been calling me all week. I made 3 sad donations in September. I agreed, unfortunately, to meet 3 people for lunch, and now they're all calling me, which is unfortunate. But no, Brad, I get your point, and pecking order and your self-deprecation thing is well taken. But this was a great segment with McCloskey, Brad.
And you heard me ask him, essentially, I was saying, in so many words, I said, hey, Mark, are you one of the wackadoodles too? And he comes right back and says, these people are right, the other people are wrong. Once again, you got to respect the guy because he doesn't back down. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And you said, and now my favorite correction that he made of yours, you called it a purity test. And he said, no, it's a quote, policies and procedures test. See, I like that from McCloskey. It's not purity, Brad. This isn't the 1950s. You're not making sure that a girl keeps her knees together. It's not about purity. It's about policy and procedures.
No. Okay, we have to move on. This, I'm sorry. There are times with this show I think to myself, is this real? You know what I mean?
It was hey, Brad, that was a great idea. I generally don't like calling people on the air, but that was a great segment, Brad. Good job.
But now here's the crazy thing. Did you know anything about this crazy Vernon counting stuff which is resurfacing again?
Because you and I happen to be, if you'll recall, less than 24 hours ago, you and I are on the same text thread with someone. So yes, I did hear there haven't been any credible news stories about it.
Well,
so
that's the interesting
I don't
thing.
consider old people posting on Facebook to be journalism and old people reading it to be journalism. But I'm looking forward to seeing some media coverage about it for sure.
But this Dr. Camille Winter would be proud of me. Who do I go to? I go to the source. I don't
the actual attorney, Brad.
Yes. I don't mess around with somebody who's having lunch with Tracy Ellis at the Brass Rail. I call the source. Okay, we'll take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?